Hi, and welcome to the talk. Healing takes more than just mindset. This is something that I didn't come to easily or on my own overnight. It was something that's taken almost 2 decades of discovery to get to. So, just like you, I was raised in Western society, modern day society, where Western medicine was really the only application that was used or introduced to me if I was sick or had symptoms, right? The idea that if there's something wrong with you, you go to the doctor and they fix you. And so my whole life, I had this scenario where I felt like my parents would take me to the doctor. I would tell them what was going on, and I never got better. The only advice I was given was I was too sensitive, that I need to grow a thicker skin, that I had to take the medications and come back when it got worse. And this did not feel good to me as a little kid, and it actually felt disempowering. And the feeling only got worse as I realized that Western medicine was failing me as an adult. So to take you back 15 years ago, I was working professionally as a medical researcher at a big university here in New York. I was ironically working with chronic pain patients. It was a geriatric community. So these patients were on average, 65, 70 years old. And we were trying to implement protocols that did not involve medications because my boss had seen all the side effects that the opiates were creating and how people were actually getting better. Not weren't getting better, they were getting worse. And so she wanted us to implement guided imagery and meditation and offer coping skills to this population. And at first that sounded great, but when you're not brought up in that system of learning, and that's not what you've learned in school, that's not what you've learned in your culture, it's really hard to convince somebody else to try it, right? Because it seems so radical, so different. And how could something so simple as visualizing a different outcome or having more skills in my toolbox actually help me with severe chronic pain, chronic disease? And so I was trying to implement this protocol. And it was hard because I didn't really believe in it myself, right? I was taught that Western medicine was the end all be all. That's all that there was. You got your vaccines, you went to the doctor when you were sick, they gave you a medication, you got better. If you didn't get better, you went back, right? And that never worked for me, but that was still the system that I was raised in. So it's all I knew. And as I began working with this population more, I began to resemble them. And it was really scary to me because even though I had symptoms my whole life as a child, I had headaches and stomach aches, and I felt things that, you couldn't see because I was told it wasn't real. And there was no terminology for highly sensitive person. I'm a child of the 80s, so that wasn't in existence yet. Dr. Elaine Aron didn't coin it until the late 1990s. And even then, like, there was not a lot known about things you could not see, right? And other ways of healing and other types of healing. It was like, take the pill, come back when it gets worse. If it doesn't work for you, there's something wrong with you. And that was the message I heard ever since I was a small child. Like, you're broken. There's something wrong with you. This works for everybody else. And what happens when this experience keeps occurring is you get stuck in the story. And so you start to believe the story because you're told it so many times, like, I must be broken. There must be something wrong with me. And this story grows and expands, and your brain actually creates new neural pathways building up this story so that the actual truth is no longer there. And it's not something you can tap into easily because you've spent so much energy consumed in this story of I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, I'm not a compliant patient, the medications don't work for me, I'm the 1% side effects, it's something wrong with me. And so when I began to resemble my geriatric patients in my late 20s, I could no longer ignore the symptoms from my body. It was just too many every day, all day long. And it was such a strong effects that I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't leave the bathroom. I was breaking bones in my feet, just walking on uneven ground in flats. And the doctors didn't understand it. And so again, their toolbox is take this medication, go have more of these tests, and we'll see what's going on. And as a child, my tests were always inconclusive. My lab work was quote unquote normal. But because we're not taught how the body works, we're not taught about how complicated the design is, how smart the system is, how it's always working to achieve a balance, how it's always working to keep you safe. It's only concerned with survival. None of these other concepts are ever mentioned. And unfortunately, in the arena of healing, the idea of mindset is touted all of the time. And this does not make me happy. One, because it was something that was touted to me and it didn't work. So again, it reaffirmed this belief that there's something wrong with me. I must be broken. And it's not true, because after 15 years of research, reading thousands of books, listening to thousands of summits, you know, talking to so many hundreds of doctors, and I now know that healing is not just only in your mind. You can't just rewire your brain with neuroplasticity and get well. You may get better, you may have less symptoms, but you need to bring the whole body along, the whole system. So the system is not just mental and physical, but that is what is focused on in Western medicine, right? There's a standardized protocol, a cookie cutter approach. And if you don't fall into that cookie cutter approach, if you don't respond to the standardized protocol, then there's something wrong with you. And I want, if you get nothing else from this talk, to understand that's not true. There is nothing wrong with you. The system is broken, not you. There is no cookie cutter approach for every person. You need a unique individual approach because you are a unique individual person. You have a unique past experiences. You've had unique current experiences. And there is no one approach that's going to work for each person. This is not one size fits all t-shirt. And as much as I tried to conform into that idea, even when I was studying mind, body, spirit medicine and understanding that there were more aspects than physical and mental, that there were spiritual and emotional and energetic, and the body is electric, I still wanted to conform because that's a form of safety, right? My body needs me to stay safe. So I can't go out and do my own thing and be rebellious. I need to follow through. I need to do what everyone else is doing because otherwise it's dangerous. And so even though I knew these things and I was trying to implement them, it was too hard too fast, which is actually another form of trauma, right? So trauma is not the event. It is the reaction to the event, to the stressor. And so in this modern day world, everyone has had experience with trauma, whether or not you feel like you've had an idyllic, picturesque childhood. Everyone has had exposure to trauma. It's just the way it is in the world that we live in. We are exposed to war. We are exposed to violence on TV 24/7, on social media, on the computer. It's an onslaught of someone else's idea, someone else's opinion, you know, who you should be, what you should do, what it's supposed to look like, how, what is sickness, what is health. And because of this, your body is fighting 24/7. And again, because you're not taught how the body's designed to work, the body can only fight or it can heal. It cannot do both at the same time. So again, when you don't understand this, you actually work against yourself by doing too much too fast, right? Because we think, oh, I did this thing, it worked. Let me do more of it. And let me do it for longer, right? And that actually goes against the way the body is designed. Because the body fears change and doesn't want change because that means death or unknown circumstances, right? Even if that's not rational, healing is not rational. So when we do things too fast, too quickly, too abruptly, too much, we actually cause more stress to the body. We create new neural pathways that are traumatic. We create more energy going towards fighting and resisting rather than healing, building resilience, building vitality. And when we conform to someone else's idea of what healing should look like, what we should look like, who we should be, how we should act, again, it is another form of betrayal to the system. It is you are conforming to someone else's standard ideal of what is something supposed to be. And that's not realistic. It's not practical. And it's not beneficial to you as an individual person. So because the body is designed for survival, it makes it really hard to work against the system in a lot of ways. And the way that I like to explain it to people is healing looks like a drawing that a toddler did, right? Like there are colors everywhere, there are lines and scribbles and shapes, and it's really not discernible. It doesn't make any sense. It looks like a whole huge mishmash of things, and you can't discern what the heck the drawing is. That's healing. There's ups, there's downs, there's plateaus, there's wrong turns, there's hazardous paths, there's, you know, pitfalls, and it can be really hard. But because we are human, we actually make it harder than it needs to be because we still stay stuck in the mind, thinking we know better. Oh, I did all this research, so I know the best way to do this. Or I did it that way, it didn't work, so I'm going to try something new, but I'm going to still only do it in my mind, in my brain. I'm going to try to, I call this manic healing, when we obsessively do a behavior, but we don't land in the rest of the body. So we're still numb from the neck down. So the mind is simply part of the body, but we give it so much credence in our society. Everything has to be rational. It has to make sense. It has to fit in with what everybody else is doing. If you stand out, if you're different, that's bad, right? But different is just doing something else that you've never done before, or being open to something new. Like it's not bad. It's just different. And so when we fall and ascribe to these beliefs that, you know, were inherited and passed down to us by culture, by society, by your parents, your family, your teachers, right? By age 7, they're not yours. They're not your parents either. They just inherited them. And this, you know, this is what everyone does. And that's the thing, is when you try to go against what everyone else does, you're told you're crazy. That won't work. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you fire the doctors? You're going to get sicker. You're going to be worse. These are all things I heard when I fired my doctors, when I left the Western medicine paradigm. And that was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And I'm still here. I'm a lot better. I'm healing much more than I was when I followed that standardized protocol. But it hasn't been easy. And healing is very simple in theory, but because we don't understand how the system works, we work against it. We make it harder. We use the finite energy we have to resist, to fight, to prove that we're right, to prove that we know better, to prove that we can put the body into submission. We can beat it and make it work and make it do what we want. And all of this just keeps you stuck on that merry-go-round, on that hamster wheel of doing the same thing over and over and over again and thinking there'll be a different outcome. So my invitation to you is to be open to doing something different. And we do this in small, very, very small intentional steps, because change is scary to the body. So we don't want to scare the body. The body likes predictable behavior. It likes to be able to say A plus B equals C, but healing doesn't work like that. And so when we make too big of a change, or we try to do, you know, create a new habit, change our personality, change our behavior, it will seem as if the body is sabotaging you because it wants you to go back to predictable behavior. It wants to know what the next step is going to be. It doesn't like if it doesn't know. But you can work with that part of the system, the design of the system, by taking very small intentional steps. Because change is scary, but it's the only thing that exists in life all the time. Life is uncertain and we like to control it. We like to make it predictable, but you can't, because you can only control yourself and the way you react or respond. And so most people in society are constantly reacting to life. They're constantly, playing the victim, trying to control everything. Maybe they use social media to numb out, or they have a food addiction, or they're addicted to drugs and alcohol, or to social media, or to shopping, or to people pleasing, codependency, personality techniques. These are all ways that the body kept you safe as a child when you could not protect yourself. However, all of these parts of you, they're your protectors, right? They are designed in childhood to keep you safe, but as an adult, they can keep you stuck. They can keep you stuck in telling the same story. They can keep you stuck in sickness and illness and pain. They can keep you stuck in a dynamic that is not healthy. They can keep you stuck and feeling like you have no power, as if you have no choice. And I know exactly what this feels like because I've spent a lot of my life this way. And it's harder when you know better to do better. But then you can be free from the story. And again, it's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight, right? So the 5 tips I'm going to share are 5 tips that I've found to be helpful for anybody, regardless if they are dealing with chronic pain or chronic disease. We all have symptoms. They're messages from the body. And regardless if you've been diagnosed with something or not, you have messages from your body. And when you numb yourself out, or you try to push them down or stifle or ignore them, you create more trapped energy in the body. And that leads to pain and disease. So if you're interested in having less pain and less disease, let's check out the 5 tips. So as I said, the body is actually designed to heal. Mind, body, spirit medicine addresses all aspects of the body, but it is hard to do it all at once, right? So you pick one to focus on, right? So I'm going to feel my feelings. I'm going to feel my sensations. I'm going to let my mind take a break. I'm going to feel what comes up in my physical body and see if that makes me think of something or if that brings an emotion on. I'm going to ask for help from something that's bigger than me, which was really hard for me to do because, again, I couldn't see it. So I didn't believe it because it can't be real. You can't see it. And if you aren't raised religious, you might not be spiritual. But spiritual and being spiritual and being religious are 2 different things. And so I invite you to be open to how you can invite in other aspects of the body. So our first tip is to breathe. Because as I said, most people are holding their breath. They're bracing for impact. They are numb from the neck down. They don't want to feel their sensations or emotions. They feel like if they avoid them, if they ignore them or stifle them or numb out, they're actually helping themselves. But as I said, you're not. You're creating more trapped energy in the body. Because the body is electric and energetic, it needs to flow. Things need to flow in the body. And so emotions and sensations are indications from the body that there's something that needs to be released. There's something that needs to be processed. There's something that needs to be paid attention to. And I'm sure you know that when you don't pay attention to them, they get louder. They increase. And that's exactly what happened to me. Like my body had been giving me messages my whole childhood, my whole early adulthood. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I had to listen because my body shut me down, prevented me from doing anything else. And we don't want it to get to that point. We want to start the dialogue when it's happening so that we don't have to go back and unravel years or generations of the work. We want to be able to be present with what's coming up now, to honor the messages from the body, understanding it's not broken, that it's trying to help us, that there is a greater reason that this is happening, right? So emotion is just energy in motion. And when it comes up, if you can sit with it, feel where it feels in your body. Maybe you feel it in your belly. Maybe there's a tightness in your chest. Maybe you feel it in your head. You might feel like a headache coming on. Maybe there's a joint that cries out to you for attention. And just sit with it for a few minutes. And the body will release it. It will allow it to pass through. It only takes 90 seconds for it to release. The integration after, can vary as to how long it will take. But that's the point, is when you actually sit in the present moment and do the work of feeling your feelings and your emotions and sensations, you don't have to go back later on and work through all that stuff again. And I like breath work. It's a cornerstone of my approach. And the reason I like it is it's nothing new. You've been breathing since birth. If you haven't, you're no longer alive, right? Like, you have to breathe in order to exist. But it's intentional breathing. It's being aware that you're physically inhaling and physically exhaling. It's allowing the sensations to come without judgment, without expectation, without a story, without an agenda. We don't try to control what happens in the breathwork session. We just let it be. We allow the wisdom of the body to turn on and the mind to rest. Because the body is so smart. It's so much smarter than Western medicine gives it credit for. And ancient healing techniques have spoken about how smart the body is. And modern day medicine is only just catching up to that now. So the second part is toxins. So the top picture, is what most people associate with a toxic area. But where I live on an island in New York. This could be a toxic image as well, the bottom picture. We have, a lot of issues with sewage runoff and cesspool runoff and factory farms polluting the water and chemtrails and things like that, right? It's all high in nitrogen from fertilizers and Roundup and things like that. So it's important to be aware of your environment, of what you can actually control, right? So I can't control the farms who are polluting. I can't control the factories who are polluting, right? But I can control what I put in and on my body, mostly, right? Because I still live in the world. So I can filter my air. I can filter my water. I can make sure that the ingredients of the items I cook with, clean with, and use for personal care products are not harmful and dangerous, because most of them on the market are. I don't use candles. I don't use air fresheners. I don't use any chemicals in my household, because I've seen the effects of what happens, and because my sensitive system will tell me when there's a problem. So I'm that person that I know someone's doing laundry 5 houses away from me. I know someone sprayed Windex in the neighborhood. I know someone who's smoking a cigarette down the road, because my system is sensitive. And this is made to be a weakness in modern day society, but it actually is a benefit to be the canary in the coal mine, because in past societies, when we lived tribally in, on the land, people who had systems like me, we kept the tribe safe. We knew where the animals were going to be. We knew when weather was moving in. We knew what plants were safe to eat. We knew where it was safe to sleep. We followed the indications from Mother Earth. We lived in harmony with her, and that's something we don't do in our society anymore. And the more you're exposed to toxins, the greater inflammation will be in the body. And short-term inflammation is fine, right? To like heal a cut, you roll your ankle, it swells, more blood goes to the area to heal the swollen ankle. But when you're chronically exposed to long-term inflammation from stressors, from toxins, from invisible toxins, you increase chronic pain and chronic disease. And this is why the Amazon next day, the fast and easy, convenient lifestyle is not sustainable. And it is not healthy for humans, for Mother Earth, for the animals, the insects, because it leads to more sickness, illness, breakdown of community, breakdown of connection to something that's bigger than us, to the wisdom that exists within Mother Earth. And this is why it brings us to tip number 3. Get outside, appreciate Mother Earth and all that she provides. She is so resilient. She is so resourceful in that no matter how much humans pollute her and damage her and abuse her, she still comes back. She's still alive and she will outlive all of the humans. And she can counteract all of the harmful radiation that you get from the electronics, from all of your devices, from the smart meters, from the Wi-Fi routers, from the 5G antennas, the 4G antennas, from the Bluetooth devices. Like, the body was not designed to handle all of the things that we're exposed to now. Just think within the last, not even 100 years, like how much has changed. Like, I'm just going to go back to the 1980s. So I was born in 1982. So TVs, you had to sometimes get up to change channel. You only had like 5 channels. There was probably only one TV in the house. There were no cell phones. There were no computers. There were no smart appliances. There were no smart meters. There, like, you couldn't program your thermostat from, 5 miles away from your house. Like, these things that we consider convenient and make our lives easier are actually making us sicker. They're actually making us have more symptoms. They're actually making us live for a less period of time. So it's an awareness of how are you engaging in life. Even if you can't see it, you think it doesn't exist, it does. So a lot of these toxins are invisible, and Mother Earth counteracts that with her frequencies. That's why you feel better when you're at the beach, you go camping, you go on a hike, you're sitting around a lake, because you're experiencing, your body is actually picking up her positive frequencies, which is mitigating the negative electronic frequencies from your devices, from modern day living. Now, I don't eschew modern day living. Like, I don't want to go back to before there was indoor plumbing, but I don't spend all my time on the computer, not on my phone, ever. I use it to call and text, and that's it. Everything is hardwired in our house. Our Wi-Fi router is not on. We don't have a smart meter. We don't have smart appliances. Does that make our life harder? No. My life is not any harder. It's less stressful on my body, and I choose to live this way because I know that it's better for me. And so you get to choose what's best for you, not someone else. You have that choice. So this is key number 4. So there's a dog here, little boy. I don't advocate for pets in the bed for multiple reasons, but also because it disrupts your sleep. And a lot of people think that they can sleep when they're dead. They think that they don't need sleep. They can have 4 hours, they'll be fine. But it's not true. It's really important, especially because if you're not sleeping, your body cannot run the important detoxification protocols it needs to run at night. If you're eating late at night, close to your bedtime, if you have your phone in your room, you're getting radiated all night. If you have a smart TV, if you have a Bluetooth device, turn your phone off. Put it on Do Not Disturb or airplane mode. Take the devices out of the room. They don't need to be there. You want to have restorative sleep. If you're waking up and you've been in bed for 8 hours and you're still waking up groggy, it's because you're not getting restorative sleep. And a lot of that is from tech. People sleep with their phones under their pillows or on their nightstands. They use it as an alarm clock. It's become a way of life. But you need to be curious and ask, like, is this actually beneficial for me? Do I really need to do this? Do I really need to have the phone in my room? Like, is it really important? You could leave the phone on and have it on the other side of the house if, like, you feel like someone's going to call you in the middle of the night. I know there's some people who are in fields that they might get calls in the middle of the night, but you could have the phone on the other side of the house. It doesn't need to be right next to you. And again, the worse your sleep quality is, the less sleep you have, the more symptoms, the more stress on the body, the more you're going to get sick and have more pain. So I'm going to invite you to be open to the idea that you could try something different. And again, in a small way. Can I put my Wi-Fi router on a Christmas timer? Can I call and get the smart meter removed from my house? Can I take my phone out of my bedroom at night? Can I go through my personal care products and go to the environmental working group site and see what they're rated? Can I be more mindful of eating real food, not processed food? Eating food that has an energetic component that came from the earth, right? Pasture-raised animals, organic fruits and vegetables. And again, understanding that it's still exposed to the toxins of the world, but it's still better than directly being sprayed with chemicals or being fed chemicals and harmful ingredients, and then you eat those animals, right? So part of this healing is having an awareness of how you're choosing to live your life. A bigger part of it is unlearning everything you thought you knew about sickness, about healing, about your body, about health and wellness and well-being. Because what you thought you knew might not be true. It wasn't for me, and it's not for most people I work with. So I want you to be open to having this awareness of asking yourself with curiosity, right? Like, is this behavior actually benefiting me? Is this story I'm telling myself about sickness, about illness, about the way I live my life, is it actually true? Is it really true? And you can feel that in your body. When something is true, it feels different than when something is a lie. And in order to discern that, you need to quiet the external noise of what everyone else tells you need to do, what everyone else expects of you. You know, you should do this, you should be this. And again, quieting the internal chatter, because that's running 24/7. It's negative bias and it's repetitive and it's 90% the same thing over and over again. And that's where I use breath to disrupt it as well, right? But this greater components of all of these keys and the idea of unlearning, the idea of awareness, the idea of living in harmony with Mother Earth, living in harmony with your body, working with it rather than against it, are all keys that everyone can be of use, be of service to. It's not just for people who are trying to heal from chronic pain and chronic disease. It's important discoveries for everybody, regardless of where you are in your life right now. So I just invite you to think aloud, or maybe you have some notes you want to jot down after this conversation of what is your health worth to you? Like, are you okay staying stuck on the hamster wheel and the merry-go-round to nowhere in the story that you keep telling yourself of why you can't change, why it has to be this way, why it looks this way? Could you do something different? Could you take that one small, teeny tiny step in a different direction? I hope that you can. And if you want to discover more, you can head over to mindbodyspiritbreath.com. And I hope to see you over there.